Hello and welcome to the very first episode of the Final Fantasy FXN podcast. I'm your host, David Turner, and I'm joined by co-host Katya.
Hey guys.
And also by the Great Director.
Hey guys.
Just as a reminder to all of our listeners, we are a monthly podcast and we'll be coming out around the second week of each month. So this month we have, well, actually we don't have very much to talk about because the news has been really dry lately. And so I think this will be pretty short since, there's like no news. We're going to be starting things off with our news segment, and then we'll be moving on to our question segment, and then our featured discussion, where we'll be talking about the Lightning Returns game that was just announced. But of course, we'll be getting that in the news. So we'll start things off with our first news topic. Square Enix wants to remove all existing 1.0 versions of Final Fantasy XIV. This was posted by a user on NeoGAF, and it mentioned that they want to remove Final Fantasy XIV from all retail stores later this year in preparation for the 2.0 release of Final Fantasy XIV. What do you guys think about that? I know, Katya, I think you play quite a bit of 14.
Yeah, I play a bit too much.
A bit too much?
Yeah.
What are your feelings on this?
I think they just, they want to make money on it. Because the current version sells for like $10 on internet, and now they can charge full price for it. And
yeah, that's actually a good point.
That's probably the only reason they're doing it. Because also, all the people who already have 1.0 versions, they get free update, so they don't have to buy it and pay for it again.
That's a really
and this
good
way
point,
people
actually
can't buy the cheap version now just to get better one later.
That's right. And because of this, do you guys think the game should be re-reviewed? Since by the sounds of it, they're adding some pretty major changes in the game. So it almost seems like it should be re-reviewed. Like it's almost like it's an expansion to the original game, and those usually get reviewed. So we'll start with the Great Director. What do you think about that?
Well, from my experience with 14, I feel like the game sort of failed when it was first introduced. And so that should stand sort of as a point for future Square Enix games, that this was their failure, but that they can make up for it in the future. So I don't technically think it should be re-reviewed as a whole, but maybe if this game is better, it should be stood in a higher light.
Okay. Katya, what do you think? Should the game be re-reviewed?
Yeah, I think it should definitely be re-reviewed because, well, first of all, they already improved many things that people were complaining about in the beginning. And, the 2.0 version is pretty much a new game built from ground up. Like, they're making new engine, like, making everything from scratch. They could, might as well call it some other name. It wouldn't be fair, to have it judged based on what it was. Well, it's nothing like it anymore.
Well,
yeah.
Well, I kind of feel like you have to have the original and the new. You have to have both, because you can't just forget about what 14 was, in a sense. I mean, because it's there.
It's not that game anymore. They, making new gameplay mechanics, all the areas are different. It's, whatever was reviewed before, those comments won't really apply anymore to what it's going to be.
Yeah.
I think the Great Director, are you trying to say, it should be a reminder to Square Enix that, okay, we screw it up. It would be too easy on them to re-review it. Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah, I don't want them to, remove this from their history of games. The original 14 should serve as sort of a lesson for them.
But people will always remember, so...
I guess if every bad game that was released got a second chance, that would be kind of brutal for people who review games.
It would be, yeah.
But I think considering this is an online game, and it is by definition kind of evolving...
That's true, yeah.
I think maybe this does seem to be a fairly major change, and I think it does deserve to be re-reviewed. Especially since I think it's still free, right? Free to play?
No.
Is that correct?
No, I think...
When did they start charging for it again?
Oh, when I came back, it was already charging. They were charging, I think, January or February. Beginning of the year somewhere.
But by then, had they already fixed a lot of the things people had?
They added a lot of things that people were complaining about.
Yeah, I can understand how it's sort of online, so it's always evolving and updating. So I can understand how maybe you shouldn't judge its first time out, because it can get better.
Yeah, so. And I mean, most RPGs, MMOs, when they come out, they have a lot of problems. and eventually
Mhm.
they get fixed over the years.
Yeah, that's true.
But I think this is the only RPG like this where they're trying to make it better, and where they're putting so much effort to fix all the problems that people have with it. So they should get some credit for it.
Yeah, I think actually they should, and they were pretty forward about it, pretty transparent in saying that okay, we admit we made some mistakes and now we're going to make up for it. And the fact that they got brand new staff, I think this really is a completely different game.
It is.
So our next bit of news is kind of out of the ordinary since we haven't been hearing too much about Versus. So it is kind of nice to hear this every once in a while, especially from Yoichi Wada himself. But anyways, he says that he wants, or at the Final Fantasy 25th anniversary event, Yoichi Wada says that he wants to show Final Fantasy Versus XIII to everyone once it has reached a level of nostalgia. So I'm pretty happy about this myself, since I kind of like the nostalgic aspect of Final Fantasy. Like, I think it used to be better than it is now.
I wonder what he means by nostalgia, because the gameplay doesn't really look like it's what usual Final Fantasy is.
Hopefully what he's talking about is like just the actual atmosphere, like the characters and
but I just hope it's not just a bunch of fun service and not, original things that makes the game its own.
I think it'll be like the gameplay, because I remember in past like interviews it stated stuff that there would be like airships in the world and they'd have aspects of like a 2D Final Fantasy but in 3D and HD. So I feel like it'll be the nostalgia aspect will come from the gameplay and not the atmosphere, because the atmosphere seems a lot different from anything we've seen.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess maybe I shouldn't have said atmosphere, but yeah, exactly what you're saying, like airships and overworld maps and those sorts of things, going into shops and those little things. Those little things make the big difference.
Yeah.
And when they're missing, like in 13, it just was lacking.
That's true.
So it's really glad to hear that even Yoichi Wada wants this to happen. And hopefully that also means I will be seeing something from Versus fairly soon.
I don't have much hope for that.
Yeah, maybe next year.
Yeah,
we'll see.
Probably.
Maybe, yeah.
Okay, so now we finally arrive at our big news. This is massive, right?
Yeah.
A brand new Final Fantasy XIII game was announced at the Final Fantasy 25th anniversary event. The game is called Lightning Returns Final Fantasy XIII. It was announced by Motomu Toriyama, the Final Fantasy XIII director, and he emphasized that the game will be world-driven. He actually brought that up several times. So first of all, I'll just get you guys' opinion on the announcement, and then we'll move on to the more fine details of the game. The great director, we'll start with you.
Well, I sort of feel like this game, it was expected the way 13.2 ended, and it left this open ending for another game. So I feel like we expected it. The only thing was nobody wanted it initially. I mean, it's not really a game that I myself personally want after seeing 13.2's weak story and 13's lacking gameplay. But it seems like they're pushing for a good game, so I'll have to see more of it myself, because there hasn't been gameplay, so I don't necessarily know anything.
Mm-hmm.
I feel almost the same. I mean, I have mixed feelings about it. I mean, it's good to see that they bring a Lightning back, but I mean, they haven't shown any gameplay or anything, and it's hard to tell if it's going to be interesting or not. Because it like what they show in concept, it sounds interesting, but how it's going to turn out, in the practice, who knows?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like, I'll admit I have not actually played Final Fantasy XIII 2. Pretty sure people are going to hate me for that, but
it's okay.
I don't play games that I don't want to play, so so I don't understand why, like, the ending of Final Fantasy XIII 2, so I don't know the whole thing about it was expected, but I'm actually a little bit confused by the announcement myself, because I thought by now they may have got the picture that the fans don't exactly like the whole 13 series all that much.
No, but they have to milk it as much as they can.
They've
made the promise
absolutely correct
that they're
about
gonna
that.
make
That's
it
true.
what 1 or 2 games every couple of years. So they have to
Yeah.
keep up their schedule up. And
Yeah, and that just disappoints me. They're turning this into Call of Duty.
yeah.
Well, I think it was planned in a way. Like after 13, I feel like they planned ahead for 13.2 and 13.3 because they had to complete like Lightning's story, in a
Yeah,
sense.
definitely.
Because
Without ending.
yeah, hmm
But I was actually expecting 13.3 more than, just a standalone game based on one
Yeah,
character.
and I wonder if that's
yeah,
still to come.
Yes,
it might.
Maybe 2 years from now they'll announce Final Fantasy 13.3.
who knows?
Who
I wouldn't be
knows?
surprised.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, luckily there have been lots of details about the game. We haven't seen any real gameplay yet or trailers. I don't think there's a trailer.
No.
There was just lots of video of the announcement.
Yeah, just Teriyama talking about it.
Yeah, but luckily we have lots of details about the gameplay and the world. So we'll start things off there. The world itself is new, and it'll be in an area called Novus Partus, in a city called Luxirion. The world of Novus Partus is a floating city in the Sea of Chaos. This is nothing but abyss beyond the edges of these pools. Wow, that's pretty intense. Luxirion is a city of light, which is for those who worship the sacred god Bunerv. Oh, let's see if I can pronounce this. Boonivelts. Why do I have to choose these difficult things to say? And it's gonna.
It could still come up in Versus too. Don't worry.
And it's gonna have a very gothic look. And well, they actually showed some artwork of this area, and yeah, it definitely had a pretty gothic look. It had like black and white tiles and that sort of thing.
Well, it kind of reminded me of Persona 3 because it had very similar look with the colors and those, the checkered floors.
Yeah, that's the feel I got from it. It was very Persona-like in the
Yeah.
sense that of its art and all that.
Yeah, I was watching a video of IGN commenting of the game, and they were saying that they really want to emphasize the colors black and white, which is pretty different from the colors that were emphasized in 13 and 13.2, which is like a lot of pink and
Yeah, it was very.
lots of bright colors.
I think it's nice that they're focusing
Blue,
on something because I think the art direction in the first two games was all over the place. There were too many colors everywhere. This looks nicer.
Yeah, at least it might be more consistent.
Yeah.
The world of Novus Partus is composed of 4 large islands surrounded by a beautiful blue lagoon. It is a peaceful universe with a luscious nature. Lightning is the sole character, so the entire game will revolve around her. Now, this is a very interesting point here, and we'll actually be discussing it further in our future discussion. But maybe we'll just quickly talk about it right now. What do you guys think about Lightning being the only playable character?
I'm okay with it as long as they execute it well.
Yeah, I think it'll be if they do it right. If they make her like, if you care about her, like I feel like she'll do well as a sole character, because it sort of is her trilogy. So yeah.
Yeah, hopefully there'll be lots of story to support that, and maybe there'll be lots of NPC characters that you'll be able to interact with, which will make up for her being the only playable character.
Yeah.
hmm Yeah.
Also, one of the main aspects of the gameplay for Final Fantasy XIII, or rather Lightning Returns Final Fantasy XIII, is the fact that there's this countdown clock, which is constantly in the background, which explains that there are only 13 days left until Armageddon. And once that timer is reached, it apparently is the end of humanity. Wasn't there another Square Enix game which is kind of like this? The World's End in 13 days or whatever?
The world ends with you.
Was that it? Or is it...
Yeah, you get a countdown and you have 7 days, and you're supposed to die in 7 days.
Was that the game?
There were
You had
actually
a
several
countdown.
games. There was another game, but it was never released in US. The national game, the game is no name. So there's like 2 games that I can think of.
There's been several games that they've made like this.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I hope this isn't a gimmick, and I hope it doesn't impede like the player doing just things for the fun of it.
I'm worried about the countdown because I don't want to feel like I'm rushed to do
You're
things.
rushed, yeah.
And then they say if you do battles, then you can increase your time with it. That means if you don't need to do battles but you don't have time, you're still gonna have to do them, and you'll be forced into it just to stretch the time. I don't like that idea.
Yeah, there are ways to increase and decrease the time. I think there are some points that explain that a little bit more.
I'm kind of getting like a Majora's Mask vibe from this game. How there's a limited time before you can save the world. So I feel like they'll sort of try. I feel like this game could put a lot of content into it. So I don't feel like you might be detached, like you didn't find everything in the world. I feel like they might be able to solve that somehow. How Nintendo did with Majora's Mask.
I think IGN was also mentioning that even if the countdown clock does reach the end, it doesn't mean game over, like that's it. I think there is some way that the game does continue, but at an earlier point. I don't know all the details about that. That's just what they were saying. So I hope they do that well in the way that there is some kind of consequence to doing that, but you can still actually continue playing. Maybe it'll be like a new game plus or something like that. Like the game will be 10 times more difficult if you reach the end of that clock.
Possibly.
That might be kind of cool. Also different from the other games. Lightning was always kind of a normal character, but in Lightning Returns, she is stronger than ever and more like a god. This is different than I think just about any Final Fantasy game. It almost sounds like a God of War type game where like you're just this ultimate person and like own everyone.
But you probably still won't be that powerful if you still have to fight enemies.
Well, and maybe they'll just be crazy powerful.
Possibly if she's the only one who can save the world.
Or maybe she'll be fighting thousands of units like that epic 1,000 Heartless battle. That was awesome. Maybe there'll be some of those in this game.
It could be interesting if they put it in.
Yeah, I think that'd be pretty fun if they did that. Also, this will be Lightning's final battle. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean final game, because I'm sure they'll have some prequel or something like that. But
that's what I was thinking.
Probably. But,
I feel like they're going to be finished with like Lightning's story by the end of this game.
That's what I'm thinking too.
Mm-hmm.
I think this will probably be the last game featuring Lightning in it. If they do make more,
but they can make more and still include her. Just don't focus on her.
Like in 13 too?
Yeah. I mean, technically, they were advertising her all over the place, but she was hardly in it.
Now, there's also going to be plenty of costume customization, and that's going to be affecting Lightning's status in the battle. Now, this is something I'm not totally keen on, since I hope it's not just random things where like she's going to be wearing this stupid costume that's going to give her this stupid status ability, which doesn't actually have anything to do with the costume.
It reminds me sort of 10-2, the costume, the dress spheres. That's sort of what I'm getting out of it. But it's like sort of more advanced in the sense that it's really affecting you and your character.
Yeah, I get the same vibes from it. I just hope that, you're not gonna have, like, you can equip costumes, but don't necessarily have whatever comes with it attached to the character. Like, don't have abilities specifically. Like, you can equip low-level costumes but still be powerful.
Mm-hmm. See, what they mean by this is that they'll have like actual armor that you'll be wearing.
Yeah.
And like if you're wearing something with lots of metal on it, it's going to give you high defense, but maybe low speed or something like that.
Yeah.
But what I'm thinking they're going to be doing is she's going to be wearing this, like, I don't know, shirt and whatever with a picture of ice on it, and it's going to be giving her ice powers. I don't know. I think that might be kind of silly.
No, but it could be fun. I wouldn't want to, if I can customize any outfit, I don't want to wear, heavy armor.
No?
I personally no.
Maybe I've just been playing too much Dark Souls lately.
Yeah, probably.
that must be it.
Different taste.
The gameplay is going to be including a real-time blocking system, and that's designed to make the battles much more active and time-based. So I think this is pretty good since, well, I don't think any of the main Final Fantasy titles really had this. Some of the spin-offs did, and I think Kingdom Hearts did.
Yeah, Kingdom Hearts had that.
Yeah.
I just hope the game is not going to be too much like Kingdom Hearts.
I doubt it. Although, then again, there is something here that says that you're going to be able to attach 4 skills to use them, like on the just kind of like Kingdom Hearts.
Mm-hmm.
The gameplay seems a lot like Type 0 in the sense that it's a really fast version of the active time battle system, but that also it still has that essence of strategy in it. I feel like it's going to be like real time looking like, but it's not going to be exactly like that. Because that's sort of what the whole 13 trilogy has been about, looking like it's in real time, but actually
that's a good point.
An illusion. So.
Yeah, that could be it.
And I thought they did that poorly in 13, since most of the time I was looking at the menu to see what kind of commands I'd be doing. And in the meantime, there's all these crazy animations going on the screen, and you're not seeing any of them.
Yeah.
Yes, that's why I did auto battle.
Well, even with auto battle, I would be looking at what kind of commands would be being executed and they'd be executed for, and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I wasn't paying much attention to the graphics of the battle, so yeah, it was kind of a lost opportunity there. Now, if lightning dies during battle, there's going to be a prompt that will allow the player to undo the player's mistake, but at the expense of the timer. So if you die, the world is going to end sooner. So that's kind of interesting. Hope you don't die too often.
Yeah.
I gotta be cautious.
Then again, lightning is a god, so, she must be pretty powerful, so chances are she's not going to be dying too often.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be this overclock ability, which allows lightning to slow the flow of combat of enemies, except for herself, at the expense of time.
Feeling like a lot of games, like just coming back in mind, like Pikmin, how they have to strategize before the sun goes down. So you have to do certain stuff before you run out of time. But this is like you're using time at the expense of later time.
Maybe it'll be like in Metal Gear Rising. If you guys are familiar with that, where Raiden is able to slow down time and like slices enemies in half.
Maybe they're using it as inspiration.
Maybe.
Actually, in Bayonetta, you sort of slow down the time.
Bayonetta, yeah, okay.
And maybe they're trying to, make you a similar hero.
That's another game which actually they might be drawing inspiration from, since I don't know, the character in that seemed pretty powerful, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And it was kind of a God of War like game. I'm not saying that Lightning Returns is going to be like God of War gameplay, but I wouldn't be surprised if there are some similarities in terms of like the speed and the fact that she's like so powerful. So she's probably going to be fighting lots of enemies by herself. So I think this is kind of obvious from the 13 days until the apocalypse. But time is of the essence in this game. That kind of goes back to what Katya was saying. The player might be feeling rushed. So that kind of worries me just a little bit.
Same for me.
This is a really good thing here. The player can control her movement freely during battle, and this is something that I think was missing in 13 and 13-2.
Sort of going more action-oriented, which isn't a bad thing.
Yeah, well, I'm hoping it'll be somewhat like in 12, because I kind of liked how you can move around in 12. I'm thinking it'll be a lot faster, though.
That's true.
As long as you can use it for strategy, I think it could be good.
Yeah.
Not just, pointlessly running around.
Yeah, but hopefully, like you say, if you like run behind the enemy, you might do more damage and that sort of thing. They might have a weak point. Maybe there's a giant enemy crab that you have to fight and you have to attack its weak point for massive damage. That sort of thing. So, well, you never know, because there might be a battle based on real Japanese battles which actually took place in real life. Oh, this is another really interesting thing, that there's going to be a day and night cycle. This kind of could be a cool feature, but I just hope they do it properly.
Yeah.
It could be nice. I mean, like in 13.2, there was one area where you can change weather for different things.
Yeah, that's what I understand.
And I like how it works there. It could be nice here too.
And it might also be a good way to gauge how much time is left, because maybe, I don't know where this clock is going to be. It might be up in the corner of the screen all the time, or it might also be in the menu. I'm not sure. But if you can see the day and night cycles, you can more or less gauge how much time is left. And it'll more or less be real time, I'm sure. Like, it won't just be random and you'll see it like 100 times. I'm sure it'll correspond to the actual time remaining.
Yeah, they can also use it for gameplay. Like, certain events can happen at certain time of day.
Yeah. Some in the day, some in the night, yeah.
And maybe more powerful monsters come out at night
Yeah.
and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if it's done properly, that could be a killer feature. Now, in my opinion, this is a good thing, but many people might not agree. But there's only going to be one single ending, so no multiple endings. What do you guys think about that?
I like the idea.
Yeah, I really
Yeah.
like this
I
idea.
don't like replaying the same thing 20 times just to see one
Yeah.
little cutscene.
That's true.
Yeah. I'm not a fan of multiple endings because usually I find that they're not as good as if it only had a single ending.
Yeah. And the ones that had on 13, so they're mostly pointless. So I don't see them doing it much different here if they were to put it here.
Right.
Yeah.
But I know some people really like the multiple endings thing, seeing how if they play the game differently, they'll see a different ending. And I think it kind of goes with the Western RPG and the Japanese RPG kind of battle, because Western RPGs typically have multiple endings.
But if the endings would be more serious and more that have to do with the story, but it felt very random in 13.2 to me.
Yeah. So that would be an example where it was not executed very well. So I think they should focus on a single ending. So that's a good point for me. Lightning Returns Final Fantasy XIII is world-driven, in contrast to 13, which was story-driven, and 13.2, which was player-driven. I'm not confident on what they mean by that.
I'm confused, like, what they mean by story-driven, player-driven. I didn't feel much different.
Well, I guess it was that the 13.2 story was kind of weak, so I guess it was sort of more emphasis on the gameplay, which is sort of the player doing the game. But 13 was more sort of the actual game story and drama. So I don't know what world-driven really means, but I guess I can see how they're sort of changing it with each title.
I'm guessing just the things that happen in the world maybe can affect the story.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
It might be a more dynamic world in a sense. Like stuff happens at random, possibly, yeah.
Yeah, almost like an open world feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Have you guys played Demon Souls ever?
Nope.
No?
No.
Well, in that game, there's this world tendency in the game where the world would be like either evil or good, and it would change based on certain things that happen in the game, as well as some network things that the developers do. But it changes certain things that happen in the game. Like if the world is evil, the enemies are more powerful, and some enemies will only appear when the world is evil like that. And hidden paths will only appear when the world is either pure white or pure evil. So maybe they'll have something like that.
Yeah, maybe so. Yeah.
Possibly.
This next point gives an idea of the scale of the time in the game, because the developers say that 1 day in the game will equal approximately 1 to 2 hours in real life. Now, that seems kind of short, but at the same time, you have to understand that you're able to increase and decrease the time depending on the actions that you play in the game. So, for example, if you're going to be doing lots of side quests, that's going to be decreasing the timer. And if you're defeating lots of enemies, you're going to be increasing the timer.
But then possibly also depending who you talk to, maybe.
Maybe certain side quests, it'll actually increase the timer. Like if you do something really good.
Yeah.
I just hope that when they say it's decreasing the timer when you're helping people, and I assume that means like side quests, I hope that doesn't discourage the player from doing the side quests. And like, oh, well, if I do the side quest, I won't have enough time to do this other thing, so I won't do it.
Hopefully not.
You can go defeat more enemies.
Yeah, you could farm and fight enemies, do some grinding, So I hope there's not a lot of that either. Now, people in 13.2 are still alive in this game.
Oh, that's the worst point for me.
Oh, is it? Don't like any of the people?
No, I was hoping they're going to introduce new cast and new characters.
Okay.
And I don't want to see old cast. I didn't like most of it, so...
Maybe they'll just be cameo appearances.
Probably. Because like even in 13.2, it felt like they forced them on you. Like they weren't really important. But they just pulled them just for the sake of being there.
Yeah, I hope they're there for a good reason. Gameplay with solo lightning is advantageous in the sense that the player can concentrate more on battles than worrying about party characters. I think that's a good point, because in the previous games you had to worry about like the paradigms.
That's true.
That was the battle. That was how you did the battles. It wasn't selecting your commands. It was just selecting what kind of paradigm you're going to be doing.
Yeah, but this way you have to do everything yourself.
Yeah, but in my opinion, that's a good thing. Because then you're actually doing the battling yourself. You're saying, okay, attack, use this magic command. Or maybe they'll even get into more precise things like, okay, attack high or attack low and that sort of thing. Or target the enemy's arm, stuff like that. It could be a lot funner, I think, that way.
Depends how they execute it.
Yeah.
I feel like it'll give the player more freedom in their actions. How they're sort of focusing on one character, so you can sort of shape it the way you want her to be in battle.
Right, exactly. Yeah, there's going to be a lot more customization, I'm sure, with the types of battle abilities that the character is going to have. Maybe even at the beginning of the game, you'll be able to choose what type of abilities a character will have by default. Like, will they be a spellcaster type character,
Yeah.
or are they going to be a fighter? Oh, well, kind of like jobs, like the job system in Final Fantasy.
Yeah.
But what if you pick the wrong job and then you're gonna be stuck with it?
Well, they would have to make sure the game is balanced, that's for sure, so that one job isn't better than another. Like, maybe one is better for certain people, like it might be better for beginners, but maybe it kind of like peaks at a certain point, where if you get a really, really good player, they can master the more difficult ones. Like, I always find spellcasters more difficult for me, but they're usually better if you can actually master them.
Yeah.
And also, the development progress is approximately 30% done, so must have been working on it for
Quite a while, yeah.
probably this whole year, probably. Since the beginning of the year, I would assume. And we don't really have any idea of when. Oh, no, they did say when it was going to be released, approximately, didn't they?
Next year.
Like next
Yeah,
year.
next year
right, yeah.
sometime.
Nothing
Yeah.
specific.
Right. But, yeah, so that's not bad. At least we won't be waiting forever for the game.
Well, they're probably gonna have like 60% done by 3. I wouldn't be surprised.
I bet there'll be even more
Maybe.
done than that. I'm thinking it'll be out. Well, let's make some predictions here. I think it'll be out fall next year.
Oh, in Japan, yeah.
Well, we'll see Japan.
Yeah, in
I'll
Japan,
Fall next year
say
it'll be out.
November.
I say around fall, around winter, but it'll be near the
Yeah.
end of the year. Yeah.
I don't think they have that much
So-
to do for this game. Like in 13.2, they had all those areas, but here it's just 4 islands. They're probably just gonna put events all over the islands.
By the sounds of it, it's going to be a lot more open world-ish.
Mhm.
So it won't be like you're going down a single path or two that branch off. I'm thinking it'll be a lot more like Final Fantasy. Well, maybe not quite as much as Final Fantasy XII, but I think it'll be. I think the world will actually be fairly expansive.
I don't know, I get the feeling, I have the opposite feeling. I think it might actually, like, we're not gonna have too many areas to go to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they don't have too much time to work on the game. And I
Mm.
think the whole
Yeah.
13-day thing is just there so they can reuse the same areas over and over by making you coming back to the same places to do new quests.
Well, I hope not.
Because, like, even in 13.2, they had, the timelines that they had 4 different nodes for one area and then, like, 2 or 3 nodes for another area, which was basically the same thing but with small changes here and there. They're probably just using it to save money.
Yeah, probably. Well, I hope they don't do that. I hope the world is pretty big and detailed. I think that would make this game really good. So that pretty much covers all the details that we have for the game. There were a few others which you can see on Final Fantasy-FXN.net. I just kind of picked out some of the more interesting ones. So what do you guys think about the game itself, like as a whole? Do you think you guys will want to play it? And do you think it'll be good? Like better than 13.2 and 13?
I think I want to see more of it. I haven't seen no one's seen gameplay, so I kind of want to see gameplay first, and then judge it from there if I want to play it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point, because it might sound good now, but when you see some gameplay, it's like, oh, that's not what I was expecting.
Same. I would need to see first how it looks. I'll probably play it anyway, but it doesn't mean I'm gonna enjoy it.
Mm-hmm. I think I'm actually going to be playing this game. Based on what I've heard, it actually sounds like it's going to be pretty good. It definitely sounds like it's going to be different, and that was one of the reasons why I didn't want to play 13.2, is because it just looked the same as 13. It was just like, oh, I'm going to have to play this again for another 60 or 100 hours, and it's like the same thing, like in terms of the battle. But this one, it's like they're starting from scratch.
Yeah.
It's brand new gameplay and that sort of thing. So I think that's one of the reasons why I'd like to play it. There are some things which I'm a little concerned about, like the countdown clock, but other than that, I think it should be a pretty good game. But like you say, we'll have to see some gameplay, and that'll determine what the quality of the game will be like. And also, I hope that the graphics are improved, since it's been a while now since 13 was released, and I think they should do a graphics upgrade.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I think 13.2 looked worse than 13. So
yeah,
maybe
that's what
they're
most
not
people seem to say.
just gonna keep it similar.
Well, I hope not. I hope they do actually do some improvements.
I hope so. I hope they at least redesign Lightning, because last time they used the same head for the model.
I think it needs better animations.
They may use the Luminous engine for the lighting, so it could look better in that sense.
I doubt they'll be doing that, since that would probably make the budget of the game pretty huge. They'll probably use the same engine, but I just hope that they make some minor upgrades to the engine, or just maybe make the world more detailed, like in terms of art, because it was kind of bland.
Yeah, that's true.
For most of the areas, like it looked very uninspired. It was very flat.
Yeah, I agree.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe with only having one character, they might be able to do that. They might be able to just focus on Lightning. Okay, we'll make sure that she looks awesome. That sort of thing.
I hope so. I mean, like for me, the main reason why I would play it is because it's about Lightning finally.
So you're a fan of Lightning?
I mean, she's the only character that I liked in the whole Final Fantasy XIII saga so far.
Yeah, I haven't. She was probably actually, I liked Fang. I would say my favorite character was Fang from this series.
Oh, something about Fang's model bothered me. Something about her face.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
I also liked Saz, but I can't see him having his own game.
Yeah. And then after what they did in 13.2.
What was that?
In 13.2, like, they put the downloadable content, and I don't know, it was pointless. He was just running around doing random things that's unrelated to anything.
Oh, and also, what about the music? The music in 13.2 is very different.
I feel like they should improve the music. I think they should make it consistent, because 13.2's soundtrack it had like a rock song for a boss battle, which isn't something you kind of want. I feel like they should make it more consistent throughout it.
I like the style of 13.2, so if they would keep it, I would be happy.
Yeah, no. I've not been a fan of the recent Final Fantasy music. 13's wasn't too bad, I'll admit, but
I enjoyed 13's final boss battle music. I felt that was really well done.
I did actually too. I thought the boss battle music was excellent in 13. It was pretty epic. I hope it's closer to what Final Fantasy XIII's music was like, because I wasn't a fan of 13.2's from the stuff that I heard. There's like some hip hop stuff or something. Didn't seem to make sense for a Japanese RPG.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I like the vocal tracks that they used. I think Orika, the girl that sang for Ghost in the Shell intro. I mean, I'd be fine with if they would bring her back, for example.
Yeah, we'll see.
But rap was kind of silly.
Well, I think that just about sums everything up. Some of the more major news that happened this month. Tell I was earlier joking when I said we had no news.
It's a lot of news, yeah.
We were actually going to be doing this podcast a week or two earlier, but then we forgot that the 25th anniversary was happening like a day or two after we would be recording, so we'd be missing out on all this epic discussion. So it's a good thing we did that. Now we move on to our question segment. We had a couple of questions this month. One was by Street Shop Kid. He asks, what are your favorite games outside of the Final Fantasy series? We'll start with you, the great director. What kind of games do you play other than the Final Fantasy?
Well, I really enjoy platformers. Like, I like the Jack and Dax series, for one, on the PlayStation.
Okay.
I really enjoy that, and how it's sort of open-ended in its gameplay. And from that, I sort of like other open-ended platforming games, kind of like the Batman Arkham games. If you recently played those new games, I like those. And I just sort of like having platformers now in sort of 3D environments that are a bit like Super Mario 64 from the olds, and like just going into newer games. Yeah.
Some of the games I have been playing more recently are Metal Gear. I've been playing through every single game. Like, I've recently got the HD remakes, so I've been playing them chronologically, starting with Metal Gear Solid 3. Mm-hmm. Right now I'm playing through Peace Walker, and so that's been pretty fun.
Yeah, I have that.
And so I'll be playing MGS1 next, and then MGS2, and then MGS4. And luckily they patched the game with trophies finally. So
Also, I haven't
we'll be
done
able
it
to get the
yet.
trophies in 4. No, it took like, what, 4 years to do it? Because when the game was originally released, it wasn't mandatory to have trophies at that time. So they didn't have that. And now finally it's been patched to have trophies. So I can't wait to replay that. And then now, of course, MGS Ground Zeroes was announced. So when that comes out, I'll be playing that.
Yeah.
You must be happy about it.
Oh, yeah. Big time. Huge Metal Gear fan.
I still need to play those.
Oh, you really should. They're superb. Excellent stories.
I have a couple, but I can never get to them.
I've also been playing lots of Gran Turismo. I'm a pretty big fan of that series. I have my racing rig, so my racing wheel and all that, so I get pretty intense when I play that game. What other games? I haven't played Uncharted in a little while, but I'm also a big fan of that series, and you've heard me mention Dark Souls and Demon's Souls a couple times, so pretty obvious I like those games. I can't really think of any others. I also play Killzone a little bit. I wouldn't say that's really my favorite games, but yeah. Metal Gear, Gran Turismo, Uncharted. Those are probably my favorites.
Yeah, for me, I mostly play Japanese RPGs. And I like games that, more dark in tone. Like Shin Megami Tensei, like Persona, like all those. I don't know, I feel like recently they haven't made that many games like this. Like before I used to like Shadow Hearts, like Chrono series. But now they don't make that many of those games. But I also like, strange, weird Japanese games like Katamari Damacy.
Yeah, I was just going to say.
That
I
kind
remember
of stuff.
Yeah. What was that other game? Something Boy.
Nobi Nobi Boy.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one. I remember you talking about that one.
That was cute. Kind of short though.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Like you don't, there's no ending or beginning or anything. Just jump around, stretch him.
All right. Our next question is by Val from the forums. Also, just to point out, Val is also the podcast editor. So thanks to Val for that, or volunteering time for that. Anyways, the question is, what elements of past games would you like to see included in Final Fantasy XV? And what elements, perhaps original or from other games outside of the Final Fantasy series, would you like to see introduced? We'll start with the Great Director again.
Elements I would kind of like to sort of have that sort of overworld. I kind of want that in the newer Final Fantasy 15 because we haven't seen that in a long time. And I'd like to see what they could do sort of with all these new graphics. I'd like to see what they could do to bring it alive. So I kind of want that. And also, I kind of want to see a job system. I kind of want to see them go back to that. It would be interesting.
I think it might be too. Katya, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree about the world map, although I don't think they would do it since even in Versus they're removing it now. But
what?
Yes, they removed it.
Since when?
Long time ago. They're making different one, but not the typical like what we had during PlayStation 1 days.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Yeah, but I mean like those old kinds.
Yeah.
It'd be nice to see secret characters, maybe.
Oh yeah. We haven't seen that in a while.
Yeah.
Or remember the card games that we had? Triple Try.
Oh yeah.
That would be nice to see.
Triple Triad and all that, yeah.
That's right, yeah. I was addicted to that.
Yeah, I love that game. Well, those are the main things for me.
Yeah, for me, well, I definitely agree with you guys about the overworld, and I would also like to see some form of job system returning. And it doesn't need to be explicit. It can be kind of more like this character is obviously a magic character. I didn't like it that much in 10, since by the end of the game, every character could be like the exact same. And it was kind of the same way with 13, although not quite as bad. But every character could still be fairly powerful at everything in that game.
Well, they have jobs in 14.
What was that?
They have jobs in Final Fantasy 14. So the typical...
14? Yeah. That's kind of to be expected with an online game.
They didn't have it before.
Or is it explicit? Or is it explicit like you're a black mage and you're a white mage?
Yeah, you can get a job and be specifically white mage and look like a white mage, with a robe.
Oh, okay. What else? Towns. I want there to be towns. And shops that you can go to. Also the return of some kind of real-time or active battle system, like some of the older games.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Even though most people say that those are like outdated, but I don't know. I think that they can still be done. They can be modernized, but I don't think they're outdated in any way.
It doesn't have to be outdated. I mean, there are still games that coming out with similar system and they don't feel outdated. It just depends how they make it.
Exactly.
I'd like to see more like interesting mini games, you know, how they had them like in 7. I like to see something like a snowboarding mini game or something.
Yeah, the mini games. Yeah, there are definitely a lot more of them in the older games.
Because they said they put mini games in 13 too, but didn't really feel like it.
Yeah,
Because they had that clock thing that you run around, but that's not the same.
yeah.
And they had that stupid chocobo mini game in 13 where like didn't you guys hate that?
Oh God.
They had that annoying music playing.
I don't even remember it.
Maybe for good reason. You just kind of forgot that memory.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was like the worst part of the game. So that's all of our questions for this podcast. If you want your question answered on the podcast, you can just go to the questions thread on the forums and ask it there yourself. And if you're lucky, it'll be answered on the podcast. So now it's time for a feature discussion. And this month's feature discussion is based off of a thread that was created by Amy Hayes on the forums. And the question was, what do you think of going solo in Lightning Returns Final Fantasy XIII? Just to sum up the thread, it says, any thoughts on this new battle system and customization options, and whether or not going solo is a good thing or a bad thing in a story and character-driven RPG such as this. And along with the thread, it had a poll, and the results were 20% people said going solo is how it should be, 50% of the people said no, you should have a party, and 30% said neither. Customization will make up for it. So this thread got a lot of popularity, and I think it's up to about 6 or 7 pages now. What do you guys think about going solo? I know Katya definitely responded in the thread. I'm not sure.
I don't even remember what I wrote, but I mean, I'm okay with it. But I was expecting
okay with it?
to have more party members.
Oh yeah.
I wanted to see maybe like something like 10-2, where we had 3 people. I think I would rather have that, but at the same time, I'm okay with this.
Yeah. What do you think, the great director?
Well, I voted sort of on the neither, that customization would make up for it. Because sort of I believe that Japanese role-playing games can sort of be anything as long as they focus sort of on the character itself. So I don't think you need a party as much as you focus on just that one character and what they go through. So I feel like the customization will make up for the lack of party and the lack of gameplay that you could have with a party.
Yeah, and I think I perfectly agree with going solo is perfectly fine. Because there actually have been other Final Fantasy games which only have one character playable, like Crisis Core, and that was brought up many times in the thread as an example of a Final Fantasy game which does actually have only one character. And you could probably argue that Kingdom Hearts is only one character, since most of the time Donald and Goofy don't really do a whole lot.
Yeah.
Dirge of Cerberus comes to mind.
Right, yeah, Dirge of Cerberus only had Vincent. And Kate Sith. I can't forget about
He was
him.
playable.
For one section, yeah. You had to sneak around some enemy soldiers.
Oh, really?
That sort of thing. Yeah. Lasted about 5 minutes. It was like a little side. Well, it wasn't a side quest because it was mandatory, but yeah. What other games? Can you guys think of any other ones? I mean, Type 0 really isn't, because you do have other players fighting with you.
Yeah.
Parasite Eve, but that's not Final Fantasy.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, I guess like Dissidia, it sort of is, because you don't really have party members. But that's sort of a whole different genre, so.
Yeah, it really is. I think Crisis Core is the best example.
Because it sort of is, like, it's sort of in the same light of that, how it's one character story, yeah.
Yeah, and it's an action RPG, just like, well, I don't know. What do you guys think Lightning Returns is going to be? Is that going to be more action RPG, or is it going to be more traditional RPG? To me, it sounds like action RPG.
I think it's going to be like something in between.
Yeah, I think it's something in between. They're not going full action, because they've stated several times that it's sort of an action time battle system, which means it's not all real time, but it'll have elements of it, so.
I think ATB is going to slow it down.
Yeah, maybe. So we have a few forum comments, and the first one here is by Jesus. He was saying, okay, a few of you said along the line of, as long as going solo is done right, it's okay. But then he says, exactly, how can it be done right?
I kind of think that it can be done right if you have that character, if you focus on the character and not make it so that the experience is sort of not honored. Because, like, Lightning, this is the end of her story, so they need to sort of emphasize that fact that they're going to close the story and not leave any open ends. I feel like they have to round that off. They have to make it so that you can believe that this is her final story. And they also have to emphasize the gameplay is a single player aspect. So they have to make the battles more approachable with one character in your party. So that's basically what I think.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, depends how they make the battle system work exactly. But we would need to see that in action first. But I think the parts of the game outside of the battles are going to be okay because, like, most of the time you run around with just one character anyway and talk to NPC and do all the things. I don't think it's going to be that different.
Yeah, that's true. Like with Final Fantasy VII and all that, you only see one character running around. The only time you see your other characters is during a cutscene and during battle. Yeah,
so maybe they would need to, get a better story writer, but that's not going to happen.
Yeah. And the thing is, during the cutscenes, I doubt it's going to be only Lightning. She's probably going to be talking to other people.
Yeah.
That's true.
And they could be like regular NPCs which come up in most of the cutscenes. So there could still be other characters,
I heard
main characters in the story.
I heard from some news that Hope would actually be communicating with Lightning via like some communicator. So.
Oh right, no, I think I remember seeing that too. Right.
So I feel like she'll still have like actual like connectivity with other characters, but.
Yeah, I kind of get that feeling too. There may also be, like, if there's decent NPC interaction, then that also might make up for it, because that was lacking in 13.
As long as they will make it meaningful, not just events that are randomly happening or just characters that don't have any depths.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't just focus on Lightning, but there are other things going on around here as well.
Yeah, and maybe because the game is going to be so-called world-driven, that the world will actually be more interesting with like the people in it, because they might have more to say.
Yeah, that could be it.
So I think there's a few examples of how it might be done right. There's also another comment here, a fairly positive one, by Lero1000. Gameplay-wise, I think this game could be very exciting. I'm hoping the gameplay and visuals will actually get close to the first showings of Final Fantasy XIII. Looks beautiful with lots of action and freedom just for the battles. And I think what Lero is referring to here is the first trailer that we saw for Final Fantasy XIII, where Lightning was like jumping around all over the place, fighting these enemy soldiers, and using magic attacks and some gravity sort of things. And it was very fluid, so I think that's what Lero is referencing here.
Technically, if you play DCD, it's already very similar in action to that trailer, but visuals, I mean, they could make it, but even the original 13 didn't look that good.
Yeah, I didn't think
so.
And
if 13 too looked worse, I mean, it could be anything at this point.
Hopefully they really focus on the animations, because they felt so dated. It was like I was watching an early PS2 game with those primitive animations. Like, once, I think Uncharted has spoiled me just a little bit too much, because once you've played that, it's like, wow, that game has good animations, and nothing really comes up to it, even like close, that I've played at least. And then going and seeing Final Fantasy XIII, it's like, it's like barely a PS2 animations. So I think they need to step that up just a little bit, and maybe with only one character they can focus on it.
Mm-hmm. Make it more dynamic in a sense.
Yeah.
I hope so, but if they're gonna reuse enemies, I don't think they're gonna make new animations for them. Because if they're already making, new areas, they're gonna reuse something.
Definitely, I'm sure they will. Yeah, I guess we just really need to see more of the game to make our concrete decisions. It's just a little bit too early to make judgments right now.
Yeah, because the concept is saying one thing, but it can turn out into something else.
Yeah. Kind of like how 13 was originally.
Yeah, actually, I think a lot of people expected 13, the gameplay especially, to be a lot different than it was. So it could end up being very different indeed. So that pretty much sums up our feature discussion, and it sums up the podcast. Just a reminder to everybody, you'll be able to catch us on YouTube and iTunes, and of course you'll be able to find the podcast on Final Fantasy FXN.net. And well, actually, I hope to have the iTunes on there by the time the podcast is up. It should be. It'll definitely be on YouTube though, so you guys can check that out. And our next episode will be out sometime around the second week of October, probably around the beginning of the second week. And so, does everyone want to say bye? I think that was a pretty good podcast for our first try.
Yeah.
All right, bye guys.
Bye.
See you guys next month.